Have you ever felt an emotion, specifically like negative emotion, like anger, depression, or sadness, and they just overtook your entire body and you couldn't just shake it off for whatever it is that you did or that you went? Well, then this video is for you because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a practical or a couple practical ways for you to be able to really shake that emotion and to really see what emotions are. So I want to start this video with a story. So a while back, I was in business with my brother and he passed away. Now, I remember to this day when I was standing there in the hospital waiting room, and as a doctor approached me in his white coat, and he had a nurse next to him, and as I was waiting there to hear what was my brother's condition because he was in a motorcycle accident. He was coming. My body started to tingle, right? And as soon as he got close to me, and he told me, "Your brother didn't make it. He died." No, I felt an impression in my entire body. Like it started from my toes all the way to the top of my head, right? I mean, it was this strangest feeling that I ever felt. Now, I tell you that because what happened there, it might has happened to you when you experience some sort of high intensity emotion, usually negative, but it can also happen in a positive way, is your body actually remembers that emotion, right? It actually creates your brain actually releases certain chemicals that releases through your body, right? It's a safety mechanism. Now, what happens is it makes almost like an imprint, like a blueprint imprint. And where this happens, then it gets filed away in your subconscious mind, right? Now, when this happens, it's always going to be there as a reference if you don't allow these emotions to be processed, right? So one thing that I've realized is when you experience something that's very high intensity, specifically, if it could be something negative, because that's usually what holds us back, right? Like a negative reaction or negative emotion that creates sadness or depression or whatever that is that holds us back, right? Now, what that does is that belief or that memory is always there. But then what happens after that is there's always something that's going to trigger it, right? There's always, and you can't even tell what that is. And when the trigger happens, right, it brings back that old emotion and then it stays with you, right? And then once it stays with you, it creates these thoughts that are associated with it. Now, you have about 60,000 thoughts per day, and 95% of those are repetitive, and about 85% of those are negative thoughts, right? And the reason they're negative thoughts is because it's our self preservation, right? It's back in the day of the caveman where, we always need to be looking for, what the dangers are out there, right? Like the saber-toothed tiger, right? Or are we going to run out of food, right? Things like that. So that's why the majority of our thoughts are negative, right? So we have a really specifically a small window of positive thoughts, right? So that's why it makes it more challenging. If you ever experience something in your life where sometimes it's even challenging to look at the positive, right? Maybe like two people can experience the same thing. Maybe one person might be a little bit more, biased on the negative side, and the other person might be more on the positive side. Now that's a conditioning. That's another topic. But the point of this is that when you feel a really strong emotion and it makes an imprint in your body, that adds to that conditioning, right? That is going to change your thoughts when you experience something else that might bring up that event. So the very one thing that you really want to understand is that you are not your emotions, right? Like me, that emotion that I felt when the doctor told me that my brother passed away, it's not me. It was just a chemical that was released to my body, right? My mind wanted me to remember it. It actually wanted me to process it because it was a lesson there, right? But I didn't learn that lesson until a lot later, so I didn't release that emotion. So I am not that emotion, right? We are not that emotion. The emotion is just a physical reaction in our body that we feel. Now, what we want to do is it's actually know that it's telling us something. When you feel an emotion in your body, it's trying to tell you something like, am I in danger? Right? Or maybe, maybe it's an anger emotion, right? Maybe, there's somebody crossed the boundary. Someone did something to you that that pass that boundary of self-preservation, of self-protection, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? So what we want to do is first understand that we are not our emotions, right? We are not our emotions. See, as children, we get conditioned, right, not to allow ourselves to process emotions. So what do? When we cry, we were told not to cry, right? If you grew up in a different household, or similar to mine at times, right? You were told not to cry or just hold it in or just get over it, right? So then we retain those emotions, right? And then so we start associating ourselves with those emotions, but we have to realize that those emotions aren't us. We associate with them because we were never allowed, or we never were able at the moment to process them, to just let them be for what they are, right? So that's really, really important to really understand that you are not your emotions. You are the observer. You're what's beneath those emotions, right? And then once those emotions, you feel them in your body, because feelings are different. Feeling is actually the conscious side of it. Emotions normally tend to happen unconsciously, right? I mean, it's something in the background that runs in your subconscious mind that's going to react to something, right? Again, self-preservation. And then your feelings is what you feel in your body. So we are not your emotions, and then you are not your feelings. And then the other part of it that's really important is that these are created by certain thoughts, normally by a previous event, specifically for myself. In that moment, after I was told that my brother was passed away, I created this emotion, carried with me for a very long part of my life until I was able to process it and release it. Now, there were thoughts associated with that. So anytime I experience something associated, of being, like in a fearful situation, usually it would access that emotion and I would feel it, right? So again, there's thoughts associated with it. But once you're aware that you are not your emotions, right? You are not your feelings, and specifically you're not your thoughts, you're able to start changing things because, as we grow up, we tend to forget that, what runs in the background is really from years of conditioning, right? Our subconscious mind runs about 95% of our lives, right? It's like when you drive the car, you don't even realize that, at the majority of the time that you're driving, you might be talking on the phone or you might be talking to someone else inside the car. So it's just what runs in the background. So we want to be really aware that we are not our emotions, we're the observer. And one of the most important things that you can know is that you can choose when you experience that emotion on how to react or how to respond. Very powerful, and two very different ways that you can do, because if you react a certain way in your emotion, I mean, I don't know if it's happened to you, in the heat of the moment, you experience some sort of, experience that got you angry, right? And then you say something, you react in the moment based on that anger, and then it's kind of hard to take it back, right? So, or you can choose to respond, right? That's when you sit back and you somewhat process that anger, and then you respond from a different state consciously, right? So it's very important that you know that you're not your emotions, you're the observer, and you're actually in control on how do you respond or you react. If you react, you're giving your power away to that specific emotion, but if you respond, that's when you start taking control over your life. And then you start having more clarity, right? So for many years after my brother passed away, I felt like I was in a cloud, right? I mean, I was still working and I was doing things, but I felt like, it really wasn't myself. And what I realized was that initial emotion, right, that I did suppress for many years, that I was able to process and grieve the passing of my brother, that kind of held me back, right? That prevented the clarity of seeing, what can I do, what it is that I want to do with my life. I mean, to find my purpose, right? To feel more empowered. So it's very important to be able to gain more clarity by really understanding that we're not our emotions, we're not our feelings, and we're not our thoughts, right? And that negative bias that our brain has comes from our reptilian side of our brain, that it's a survival mechanism, that about 85% of our thoughts are negative. So that you start understanding why sometimes it's challenging to, maybe sometimes take a positive step forward to something you want in your life, because we have all these things that are kind of, older than we can think of, that are running in the background. But the way to start breaking and gain more clarity is by doing exactly what you're doing right here, is by understanding it and shining the light on awareness, right? Awareness is a number one step that you can do to start getting more clarity in your life. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and remember, you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings, you are not your emotions. You are the observer, right? And you are in control on how you're able to respond to those emotions, thoughts, or feelings. And that's how you start gaining more clarity. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. That'll help me on the algorithm to get this video in front of more people. If you know someone that can possibly find benefit from it, feel free to share it. And I would love to hear in your comments, how have you been able to, overcome your emotions, right? And I will see you in the next video.